Hi, Tsendai. How you doing?
I'm doing great, thank you. How are you?
I'm well, thank you. I'm well, thank you. Thank you so much for asking. And once again, my name is Oluwaseun Adeyanju. I'm the lead editor of Mariblock, an information platform or company. Uh, exploring how blockchain and digital assets can solve African problems. And I think interestingly, you as a VC, right? You kind of represent. It seems like you're exploring that, especially given the recent announcement EchoVC made, right, around the blockchain seed fund. So that is what we want to talk about here, just to like understand your thesis, how your firm is thinking about blockchain, and also maybe to talk about the investments you've made so far, right? Kind of that, right? Because I think it's interesting
Okay.
that you've started this amidst what we would call like the crypto winter, or if we could put it that way, right? So it means you definitely see an opportunity there. You know that this is just, you feel like this is temporary, and there's a long-term opportunity here. So yeah, I'll maybe just let you introduce yourself first, right? And just if you could tell us how much interest you personally have in the blockchain and digital asset space.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Sharon, for having me. So I work for EchoVC. We are a seed and early stage VC fund focused on Africa. We began investing in 2015. We've done over 60 investments to date, and we've deployed about 50 million across different investments. And we've already returned nearly half of that to our LPs. So we like to look for secrets, so interesting opportunities that become obvious in the future with the benefit of hindsight. And we also like to look for exceptional founders that are highly driven and very ambitious and are building businesses that can scale not just across Africa, but potentially into other continents. So hopefully that gives some background to EchoVC. I guess our interest and my interest in blockchain, I think initially I didn't pay much attention to blockchain. We had one member of our team, Deji Sasikbon, who was really into blockchain and crypto. But initially I didn't really pay much attention. I just thought it was more of a fad. And I got a little bit interested because I began reading more and learning more about the space, and so did a few other people in our team. And the more I learned, the more excited we all became. So not so much with the coins like Bitcoin and Ethereum themselves, but really with the underlying technology. So my fascination was that, look, here is a new form of technology that can do three different things. One is it can create a verifiable chain of record and be a source of truth. The second thing is that it can tokenize or abstract physical and digital things in our world. And then the third thing is that it was able to scale autonomously. So I think at that point, Bitcoin, this was before the crash, Bitcoin had reached over, I think it was nearly 1 trillion market cap. And it just was fascinating that someone had created this protocol that was able to scale autonomously and reach that much value. So we thought in the Africa context, using this technology could really be beneficial, not just in terms of solving certain problems, but also as a VC fund, we look for upsides and being able to unlock new market opportunities by using this new technology. So that was the basis of our interest and my interest in blockchain. And I'm happy to talk more about our thesis and some of our investments as well.
All right, great. Just quickly before we go into like details of your investments and all of that, I just want to like quickly kind of your firm recently launched this seed fund, like we mentioned, right? I just wanted to like give us some background on it. Why did you launch this fund, right? And because I mean I would imagine that it's probably one of the biggest blockchain funds right now on the continent, right? So do you want to talk to me a little bit about that?
Yes. So as we began to learn more and more, we began investing in blockchain actually before this fund. So we began investing towards the end of 2021. We did 2 investments at that time. And then we realized to really be able to be a little bit more active in the blockchain space and do more crypto investments, we had to sort of separate the blockchain strategy and the crypto investments from our regular fund. And the reason is because the blockchain fund needs to be able to invest into different things. Like it should be able to invest or receive tokens, for example. And so we decided, and also just different appetites from our investors. So some investors were more keen on that. So we decided just to create this as a separate vehicle. End of 2021, and we began fundraising for it through early 2022. And it went. We had some great interest. It went quite well, and so we began deploying immediately from this fund. So we made 4 investments last year from this fund. But I think overall, we've been thinking about the blockchain for several years, and as I said before, we just like to think about ways that we can use these interesting functions of blockchain, these interesting applications, to remove friction in Africa or just to unlock new opportunities in Africa. So that was the thesis for EchoVC Chain. So we're trying to raise an $8 million fund, and we're looking to make, let's say, about 15 to 20 additional investments over the next few years, with a ticket size of, let's say, anywhere from 200,000 up to about 500,000.
Right, great. And I think what you're saying makes sense, right? But just out of curiosity, I think you mentioned something that your firm made 4 investments already out of this fund last year. So it means that this fund had been closed since last year. It just only made the announcement recently.
Yes. So we've been active. We've been active since last year.
Yeah. Okay. So we do have we did an infographic of some of the fund that you have, some of the investments you've made. Because also we understand that the way you're thinking about the blockchain space, it's in like kind of 3 areas. You have like the foundational fintech, the DeFi functionality, and then the market making opportunities, right? So which of these investments came from this fund?
Yes, so let me talk about that. And I think also maybe just to also address the parts of one of your earlier questions around the crypto winter and why now. I think, yes, crypto has sort of gone through this winter. It is trying to recover. But for us, I think it's more about this technology is still useful. We still think it's useful. Nothing fundamentally has really changed to show that the technology doesn't work. I think what we saw in the crypto winter was a lot of these centralized entities had difficulty because either mismatches, let's say, in how they were funding and what they were doing with their investments and their money. But in terms of the decentralized protocols that were created to run autonomously, they continue to work completely fine. So the underlying technology itself is still sound. So that hasn't really changed our thesis. And so we continue to be very keen to invest because that's foremost part of our thesis is the underlying technology and how can we use it? How can we use these useful functions in Africa? So it's a learning process. I think we're also still learning. Our thinking is constantly readjusting. And also because it's venture capital, it is also high risk as well. So the way we think about our portfolio and the companies you see, the ones we did from EchoVC Chain were One Liquidity, Muda, and then Stakefair, and then Full Stack. So Ponto and Fonbnk, we had done those 2, and Odom, we had done those 3 before EchoVC Chain. The way we think about portfolio and the categories you see there right now sort of is our thesis. So we want to first think about the foundation of crypto and blockchain in Africa and how to solve some of the problems that already exist today using that foundational layer. So that comprises of fintech infrastructure. So basic primitives like liquidity, custody, and payments, and then infrastructure for other fintechs and startups to build on top of. So our 3 investments were One Liquidity in that space. So One Liquidity provides liquidity via API to other fintechs, crypto companies, and even enterprises, because this was a main pain point we saw in many different crypto startups, was they weren't able to get liquidity for their underlying customers. And then for Muda is focusing on cross-border payments, so trying to solve that primitive as well for other fintechs. So if you're a fintech trying to do transactions or trying to do remittances, they help you do seamless cross-border payments. And then Full Stack is providing infrastructure for fintechs and startups to build on top of in terms of ledgers and reconciliation engines. So they are creating those as a way for other fintechs to avoid that heavy lifting, that heavy building that they have to do before they can really launch. And then Ponto is doing also cross-border payments globally, but also focusing now on custody. So being able to provide custody and treasury services to enterprises that want to hold crypto in a regulated manner. So that sort of solves that first layer of foundation, which ties into those 4 investments. I think also in this first layer, we're also trying to find companies solving the problem of talent. So crypto talent is very rare in Africa. It's hard to find devs that can code, smart contracts. So we want to find essentially the Andelas, the future Andelas that will be fostering and training this new type of talent to help solve this pain point, this foundational pain point in Africa. So that was the first layer. And then the second layer is around trying to leverage some of the deeper functionality of these blockchains. So in particular, DeFi. So we made 2 investments in this space. One was StakeFair, and then the second one was Fonbnk. So with DeFi, we're trying to essentially use that functionality to create innovative financial products. So savings, credit, access to yield, and even thinking about, is there a way you can create a neobank, a digital bank that's decentralized using DeFi, specifically for Africa? So StakeFair does that in a way. It's sort of, it began with using DeFi to provide lossless sports wagering. So you could do bets, and then based on the yield of those bets, the winners get that yield, but you don't lose your money. But now they're trying to shift to creating savings using DeFi, and also eventually enabling a specific DeFi tool, or I guess protocol platform for African enterprises to earn yield in a certain way. And then Fonbnk is allowing consumers to access stablecoins or access crypto through airtime. So it's a very interesting on-ramp because airtime, I believe, is the most widespread digital commodity in the world. So they're allowing that easy on-ramp, but once you are into Fonbnk, you can access different consumer services, savings, and credit as a wallet. And then again, also off-ramp through airtime as well, if need be. So it's a really interesting way to play this second layer. Within this, we're also thinking about NFTs. And I know NFTs went through a hype and then a crash, but one thing that we've been very worried about is the future of work for Africa. I think you may have seen some of the interesting statistics around the workforce in Africa and as it comes of age, and the young graduates entering the workforce. So right now, I think there are about 10 million young people across Africa entering the workforce every year. And there are only about 3 million new jobs every year. But in about 10 years or so, there's going to be 30 million young people entering the workforce every year across Africa. So we're thinking with NFTs or just with blockchain as well, is how do you enable them to earn, either being part of a DAO or being able to create, them being part of the creative economy as well, and also enabling them to access different assets and access different portfolios through fractionalization from these NFTs. And then I guess lastly, I'll talk about the third layer very quickly. It's around DAOs, and this is more further out. We're thinking because of the informal nature of a portion of Africa's economies is how do you organize those into DAOs so that everyone can get a benefit. So if you're an agent, let's say an airtime agent, part of an airtime network, how can you get the benefit of that whole network and share some of that revenue by being an agent in there? Then same thing for ride hailing, the same thing for social networks as well, and for gig work. So how do you organize these informal nodes, these informal different parts of a network into a DAO that can scale autonomously and also give benefits to everyone that's in there and that's participating. So I guess that's overall a view of our thesis and also the companies and how they've tied into our thesis.
Yeah, great, thank you. And I think you've said a lot of things that I'll try to just unpack, right? But just before we, I'll start from where you kind of ended this, and that is you talked about that DAO and how DAO can be useful in Africa, and interestingly, right, one of your portfolio companies, that's Fonbnk, recently announced a partnership with Tanda, right? And basically launching an airtime marketplace in East Africa. Does this fit into? Does that like start to fit into that kind of? And you used airtime kind of DAO. I don't know how that would work or what that would look like. But does that fit into that kind of thesis?
Yes, it's interesting. I can't speak for Tanda, but it's interesting. So Fonbnk did this as a way, essentially within Fonbnk, you have airtime agents that are providing also liquidity, and either for airtime or for stablecoins. So it's not just a consumer play. The agents themselves can also use Fonbnk. And so for Fonbnk to grow, one of the ways they can do that is obviously to expand the agent network, hence the partnership with Tanda. Now, I can't speak for Tanda, but when you think about these informal networks, let's say it can be airtime agent or it can be a payment network. Let's say I'm doing mobile money. That network is being run for a company. But is there a case where, let's say down the road in the future, could they be organized as a DAO? So I'm an agent, I'm joining this network, I'm helping the network because I'm providing liquidity to customers that come into my shop. But I don't benefit from the growth of the whole network, but I am participating in it. So if you were to change that into a DAO, it could be much more interesting because it will just scale much faster. Everyone it'll just be autonomous. If you want to join the network, you have this coverage and you get this share of the revenue of the whole network if you're providing, let's say, a certain volume. So it's a way to incentivize people to join the network, and you don't have to spend marketing and acquisition costs to acquire these agents to come into the network. It just becomes autonomous. That's why I think it's really interesting. Now, obviously, there's been established networks in Africa, and they're mostly private owned or owned by companies. So it's hard to disrupt it. But I think there could be something interesting in the future where this starts to appear. And the same thing for ride hailing, where if you're a driver on let's say Uber for Bolt, part of your earnings goes to Uber or Bolt. But if that was a DAO instead, you'll be able to keep a much bigger portion of your earnings because you're participating in that as a network. So as a DAO network. So that's what we like to think about.
Yeah. So are you thinking about DAO that fits into kind of? So you used Uber as an example here. So are you thinking about DAO that still would just exist, maybe just within that kind of Uber ecosystem, or something that exists entirely outside of it and is a competitor to like Uber, right? And just community driven.
Yes, that's exactly. It will be sort of essentially a new type of ride-hailing network or a new type of agent network. Where, because I guess, let's say for ride-hailing, if you're a driver, you can drive for many different types of networks. But if there was one that said, look, we will find a way to build this technology, but the idea is that it's governed by everyone that's a driver, and the drivers can contribute to help build this. But once you're on this platform, you get to keep a bigger share of your revenue, but also the revenue that goes to the platform, you get some share of that as well. So now you're more incentivized to join the network. So you don't have this problem of trying to keep your drivers, in the platform, keep them sticky, and also to acquire the drivers themselves. So that's something that we've been thinking about. Now, we don't know if it's possible. But to me, it does make sense that you can incentivize people to join, agents to join a network, and then give them some benefit of the whole network, and then have that scale autonomously. So it may not even have to come from these sectors. It may be sectors in the future that materialize as DAOs.
Right, that makes sense. And are you having conversations around this just yet with people building anything that looks like this?
Not yet. We are seeing, not yet in Africa. We have seen something interesting that I can't speak so much about, but we have seen something interesting outside of Africa around this potential. But we can't speak much about it. But not yet in Africa. I think for Africa, we're still at the foundational layer, trying to build up talent, build up the fintech infrastructure, because you have to be able to create a DAO, and if you don't have talent that can code smart contracts and know how to do it, then it becomes very difficult. So this is very far out, but it's something that we're very excited about.
All right, great. You did mention something about, so you talked about Muda, right? I spent some time just trying to look into some of this portfolio companies of EchoVC, right? And I'm fairly familiar with Fonbnk, State Fair, One Liquidity. I think I know some of the people behind this. I think for One Liquidity, that would be, I've forgotten his name now, but yeah, I remember we had a conversation around it. And but just Muda here, you mentioned that they provide like that kind of cross-border, over-the-counter kind of transaction and all of that, so payments, right? And that makes sense to me. That I don't know if you've heard of this company called Kanza Finance, right? They seem to be doing something similar. What did you say?
Yes, I've heard of them.
Yeah, is Muda similar to Kanza Finance in some aspects?
So I'm not 100% familiar with what Kanza is doing now. When we first came across them, I think it was about a year or 2 years ago. They were trying to create a network of FX agents and let them on-ramp, off-ramp into crypto for themselves and for their customers. So I'm not sure if they've pivoted and added a new function since then. But maybe I can just describe Muda. I can describe what they do. So the founder, Suleiman, is the former founder of a large fintech in Uganda called Pegasus. And Pegasus is essentially it's a payment gateway to enable mobile money transactions. So that scaled significantly. It became one of the largest fintechs in Uganda. So he decided to build Muda because he was seeing a lot of interest in crypto and blockchain, and he himself was into crypto and blockchain. So he began Muda as a way to solve cross-border payments within Africa. So if you're a merchant or you're a fintech operating across different countries or buying and selling from one country to the other, being able to do that transaction is very difficult because sometimes the mobile money networks don't talk to each other, and then also the banking networks are very expensive and very slow because typically they have to cross into USD, which can take some time and also can be very expensive. So what he began is Muda is essentially a way to leverage agents, but he provides a payment rail to send cross-border using stablecoin as the intermediate. So it becomes much faster and much cheaper. So, and he also does OTC. So if you're an enterprise looking for liquidity or want to exchange, he can do OTC for that. So that's what essentially Muda was. And we were really impressed with him and how he's thinking about the business and trying to build something that will scale across Africa, but also thinking about Africa-Asia payments as well. I think also something we think about is payments itself can easily become commoditized. I'm not saying that it will, but it can easily become commoditized. So for Muda, also part of that is the vision around what additional tools you can give agents, merchants, enterprises beyond just payments. So building beyond payments into an ecosystem of other services. So that's what we thought was really exciting.
All right. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense to me. And I was asking this because I'm just curious to know. So I was thinking maybe Muda is that like, helping enterprises because we understand how the kind of FX issues that many African countries are experiencing right now. So I was thinking maybe from your initial explanation that is what they are part of what they're trying to solve, right? But yes. It doesn't seem like that. Okay, you're doing that.
Yeah, for the OTC, they will do that. And also if you're enterprise paying cross-border, they would do that as well. But they like to focus, it's not just enterprises, so it's other fintechs and also merchants and also traders as well.
All right, great. Yeah, that makes sense. But just on this EchoVC Chain fund, right? What is the average kind of ticket size that you're looking at, right? I mean, it's an early stage fund, right? So what is the average ticket?
So we're looking to be investing ticket sizes of anywhere from 200,000 up to about 500,000. So I guess think of the average, let's say around 300, 350,000. But it'll be that range, and it'll be seed. It can be pre-seed, seed, or what we call seed plus, which is the largest seed deals before they get to Series A.
All right, great, makes sense. And I mean, I'm sure since you announced this, your inbox are probably full with founders asking questions and wanting to have conversations with you. Just what kind of use cases are you seeing right now that excites you?
So I think the use cases we're seeing are still fitting. I think they fit nicely into the layers we are seeing so far. We do see sometimes maybe something unique, like let's say someone trying to create a way for artists or musicians to be monetized, for example, through different tokens or just different types of wallets. But in general, we're seeing these same companies come in that fit into our thesis. So I guess it's sort of helping to support our thesis. So we are seeing like the first layer, we're seeing fintechs doing cross-border payments, liquidity, enterprise tools for managing treasury. And then second layer is around also using DeFi. So interest yield, access to savings. That's what we've been seeing so far. I think the market is still relatively early, to be honest. It's still relatively early in Africa. It's going to take some time for more of these later use cases to come in, like I mentioned, the DAOs and the second layer. So it's going to take some time, but I think at least for now, there does seem to be some building happening. There is still the issue of talent being a shortage, so not enough talent out there. So I mean, it's that maybe there are founders out there with interesting ideas, but they aren't able to get the right people or build the right team to help them execute on that idea. So that can also be a constraint as well. And then I think funding in general has been an issue. It's been not just across crypto, but in VC in general across Africa. It has slowed down significantly. And I believe most VCs think of blockchain and crypto as more risky, so there'll be even less fund coming into the sector. So it has created just much harder environment for the startups to scale.
It's interesting that you mentioned, I think this subject of talent is something you've mentioned about 2-3 times now. And I'm curious, like, to just talk about that a little bit. How do you solve that, right? I mean, I know you mentioned that you're looking to like invest in companies like your next Andela, right? That will do that. And I think maybe that is one way to think about it. Is there any other approach? Because right now, I mean, maybe because of things that has happened in the crypto space over the last 1 year, people are maybe just not so much interested in risking their careers on a space that may not be around, right, in the long run. So it takes, having like deep conviction, right? But I mean, we started Mariblock in the middle of the crypto winter, which we are still in. And it takes conviction, seeing the possibilities of this technology on the continent, right? So how do you what approaches, in addition to like that Andela model, do you think this can be solved? Because we have like this boot camps, Binance sponsoring this and all of that educational program. I don't know just how much that is moving the needle at the end of the day.
Great question. It's a hard problem. It's a hard problem to solve. I guess there's different vectors you can try. I guess if you're a dev, you've learned how to code from school, or maybe you self-taught yourself. Those that have interest in blockchain, I think typically will be able to try to find a way to teach themselves using online courses. But if there's a way, for example, for universities to have some aspect of blockchain in the curriculum, that could be a great boost. The second is trying to at least foster these acceleration hubs, like you mentioned. So I know Binance is doing some work, but there's a hub here in Kenya called BitKE. I think you may know them. That we really like. We've been trying to support them. They are a small studio. They began doing content and news and media, but they also are training devs and also doing their own incubation. So they've been doing a lot of work for the ecosystem in terms of being able to train some of these devs on how to code on different blockchains. So I think you just need more of them, or they need to have the resources to be able to scale up and deploy, not just across Kenya, but into different countries as well. So it's going to take some time. We're still in the very early stages, but I think we'll get there. I think also as the use cases and the successes become apparent and materialize, then more young people that are into coding will see this as a viable avenue. So I think this is why some of the successful fundraisers have been a good thing, like Yellow Card's fundraise and Jambo's fundraise. They both raise significant amounts from investors outside of Africa, including large blockchain-focused crypto VC funds. So that has been, I guess, a very positive impact on the environment and on the ecosystem. So as they scale and as they become bigger companies, maybe even possibly some of them becoming unicorns, that should motivate some of the younger talent to realize that blockchain and crypto, it's real, it's interesting, and they can build in that space.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. And just to, because I think one of the most important parts is really to get people interested in this space is to also make them understand the potentials in the space. And just you mentioned earlier that you really didn't believe much in the space. You thought it was a fad, and but here you are now. Are you the one leading the EchoVC chain on?
Yes, so there's three of us involved in EchoVC Chain. So the founder of EchoVC and the managing partner, Agosa, is myself, and then Deji Sasekbon, who is another member of our team.
Yeah, all right. So, I mean, here you are kind of leading, the blockchain fund. So what was that point in you? And I think I'm asking this just for people that are like asking questions, why should I even be involved in this space? So what was that point in you that you became, maybe from more optimistic, right, to becoming a total believer in the space? What was the turning point?
I think it was once I started to learn more about the technology. Initially, I was just dismissive because Bitcoin to me didn't really have much value. It's an interesting asset, but it didn't have much value. But as I learned about how Bitcoin works and how the blockchain works for Bitcoin, the technology itself was just fascinating to me in that, okay, this is scaling autonomously. It's a source of truth is verifiable. And it's been able to just create an asset that has gathered so much value in terms of its market cap. So that was a turning point for me, I think, was more of the technology itself. And then I read more about, Ethereum and then smart contracts and how now you're sort of going to a different layer where you can execute programs, execute instructions on the blockchain itself. And that is sort of a new form, it's a new computing platform in a sense. So that was also really fascinating for me as well. So I realized you can just create all these different interesting applications to run on this autonomous chain. And they can be autonomous in scale and eventually become something really significant. So I think that was a turning point for me, was really understanding the technology behind it. And it wasn't something that we've seen before. This is sort of happening before our eyes. So it's very exciting, it's fascinating. And I think just as the internet evolved and came into fruition, it's sort of the same tangent, which is this is a new form of interacting with technology, and it could become something very significant in the future.
Right. Yeah, it's interesting you use, I hear you, and it's interesting you use Bitcoin as an example. Well, a lot of Bitcoiners don't believe in, a lot of these other applications that have been built on the blockchain these days. And a lot of them are absolutely skeptical and think everything comes crashing eventually, right? And you are a VC trying to make 10x, 20x on your investment, right? how do you manage, because there's this part of blockchain that is just about empowering the people, really, decentralizing access. So how do you balance that with your appetite for high returns?
Okay, that's an interesting question. I guess for us, right, it's about trying to leverage these useful functions. So we've mentioned the financial primitives, liquidity, payments, custody. We've mentioned DeFi, access to yield. So the idea is I want to see companies that are leveraging that, and then they are masking what they do behind the scenes. So the consumer is getting the value, or the enterprise, the client is getting the value of what they need. The problem is being solved, but it's being solved in a way that uses blockchains instead, or uses functions that have been built on the blockchains instead. So you can still create significant companies to get your VC return. It's just that you're using a different type of technology and new products that haven't really been used before. So if you look at payments today and how payments is done, it's mostly tied to the banking network. Even mobile money is tied to the banking network. So you can also add an extra layer to help ease that friction that already exists in payments. And that's just talking about payments. So there's much more applications, as we talked about, beyond that. So you can still build significant businesses, I believe, using this new technology. But you're essentially solving the same problem, or solving new problems, solving problems in a new way, I should say.
All right. So what you're seeing in essence is that you're just more interested in actual businesses that are just using blockchain in some way, either they abstract it away from the users. I think that would be your preference anyway, and versus just the entire decentralization kind of narrative.
Yes, at least for us, because we think for Africa, that's what excites us the most. So we're not really keen about backing specific coins or backing specific chains. It's more about what are the useful functions and how do you use them to solve existing problems or to unlock new market opportunities. That's what we really like to find.
Right. Okay, great. Thank you so much. There is, I don't know if you are aware of this, but there is an interesting pilot that is going on. I don't know if it's just been completed, but I know launched by Avalanche, Lemonade Finance, in partnership with Avalanche and Hannover Re, one of the largest reinsurance companies in the world. And what they've done is do kind of on-chain insurance, right, for testing with, and the pilot was held in Kenya, right? And I think somebody, a woman, insured her farm for about 83 cents. Yeah, 83 cents. And I think that is amazing, right? But it's, they were insuring against like climate outcomes, right? Did we experience drought in this planting season? And if that's so, the person, the farmer gets a payout, right? Is that something that will interest you to learn more about those kind of applications? Yeah.
Yes, definitely. I think that's something that's really interesting for us, is thinking about that, and also thinking about the merger of these different sectors with climate. With blockchain. So climate is one, AI is one, and supply chain is another one as well. So that will be really interesting for us. Yes.
All right, great. Yeah, look, thank you so much. It's been an interesting conversation. I don't know if there's something you would want to add, right? Maybe something you expected that I would ask that didn't quite ask. Maybe something you just want to.
No, thank you. This has been really great. I think the questions have been great, and we managed to cover quite a lot. I guess one thing that maybe is missing is always the regulation in terms of how that works. And,
right.
What is it causing to the landscape? I think for us, look, we want to have the regulation there. I think it needs to be there to remove a lot of uncertainty, because there's this uncertainty in terms of what's allowed, what's not allowed, and how should things be done. So I think the regulation needs to come in. It will be a positive thing. It will help remove uncertainty, provide guidance. And I don't think it's just an Africa thing as well. I think even, for example, as we think about stablecoins, what is the need for regulation for those themselves? So that can maybe even be coming from some of these larger governments like the US and the UK. So I think for us, we really want to see that come in. I think it'll be very positive for the ecosystem.
Yeah, it's interesting that you mentioned regulation just now, and uh, if you are aware with what is happening in the US right now, this Security and Exchange Commission, right, SECs are currently going, hard on the blockchain space, to crypto space actually, to the point where companies like Coinbase are now considering exiting the US, right? I mean, and I think maybe this is just one of the risks, right, for this industry. But in the event that African countries as well take this kind of hostile position towards the industry, what does that mean for firms like yours and the investments you're making?
Yeah, it's always a risk. I think it's not just for crypto and blockchain, but just in technology in general. There's a lot of risks around, even for privacy, for example. So I think for us, what we believe is that, look, the regulation, I think this is a positive technology. I think the regulators are just very concerned around things like KYC, AML, good governance, and also treasury management, for example. So if there are rules that get created around how these things should be done for different classes of entities, then that should be very positive. So I know in Nigeria, the SEC have been trying to do their own regulation around different types of crypto entities. So if you're issuing assets or you're just a virtual service provider, like what you should be doing, this is what your requirements are. And then also, how do you interact with the banking sector as well? Like, what do you need to do that? So I think that overall, if that comes out, it should be very helpful. But it is a risk that it could cause a slowdown in the sector, or just create more barriers in the sector. That is very real.
Okay, great. All right, thank you so much for your time, and this has been very interesting. And I wish you all the best in your project.